In this class, I'll be teaching you how to sew this stylish overbust corset top. So you can see it can be worn in two ways. So this is the overbust corset you are going to learn in this class. You can see the bust caging. So it actually looked very beautiful on me. As you can see, my waist is well snatched and I made an inner blouse for it. So you can wear it in two ways. You can wear the overbust corset alone. You can also wear it on top of a blouse with your skirt, with your trousers. So you can see the pointy part of the overbust. So this corset is actually a Victorian corset but style. So I'll be teaching you how to sew this stylish overbust corset top from start to finish. So to begin, I've already made my basic bodice lines from my shoulder to the full length line of my blouse. The full length line of my blouse, I use 25 inches because I actually want to style the down part of it. Here is my center front line. So I'm going to take my shoulder divide by 2. I have 7.5. I'll also place on the chest line the same 7.5 inches. Then my neckline width is 3 inches. I came down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. So after connecting, I'm going to connect a straight line to get my armhole. So I'll get the midpoint of what I have right there. So there I have 4 inches. I'm going to go in by 0.75 to construct my armhole. Then I'll place my chest on the chest line, my bust divide by 4. I have 10 inches. I'll mark. Then I'm going to complete my armhole for the front. So next I'll come over to the waistline. So I'm actually working with waist 38 inches, but I'm going to snatch 4 inches from it. So here I'm working with 34 right now. That is the new waist. So my new waist divide by 4, I have 8.5 inches, and I'm going to add 1.5 inches for my dart. So I added 1.5 inches for my dart. Then my hip line divide by 4 is 12 inches. I'll now connect from the waist to the hip line. So I'm going to come over to the bust line right now to take my nipple to nipple measurement divide by 2. Mine is 3.5. Then I'll come to the hem line and mark 2.5 inches. So I just want that part to be slanted, so I use 2.5 inches. So next I'll come down by 2 inches, which is my bust dart. So that is the difference between your front and back. So mine is 2 inches. I'm going to connect and get the midline. So next is to divide my shoulder into 2 and get the midpoint. Connect to the bust point. After that, I'm going to add that my 1.5 inch dart on the dart line. So I'll measure 0.75 on both sides. So if you notice, this dart is not the normal dart, it's slanted. So I now went ahead to complete my waist dart. So next is the underbust contouring. So I'm going to use my own method of underbust contouring by taking my underbust measurement divide by 4. So whatever I had, I marked on it, and then what I have left, I put 0.5 at the front and the rest of it on the other side of the dart. So whatever your underbust circumference is, simply divide by 4, mark, and whatever is left, put 0.5 inch on the front, and whatever remaining, put on the other side. So I've connected my underbust right now. Next, I connected it back to the waistline. So on the hemline, I'll come out by 0.25 outside the dart and connect from the waist to the hem line. So we are done with that part. The next is to go up by 4 inches. That is for my overbust line. So your overbust line can be 4, it can be 4.5 inches. It can even be 3 inches or below, depending on what you want to achieve on the overbust line. So I'm going to open up that midline from the shoulder to the bust point. I'll stop at the bust point, then cut off the excess paper I have because I want to open up my bust dart. So I'm labeling again my chest line, bust point, under bust, waist, and full length accordingly. So now I'm going to close up my bust dart after I'm done opening the midline of the shoulder. So I'll close my bust dart so we can go ahead and manipulate the overbust. So for this overbust tightening right now, this is how you go about the overbust tightening. So you are going to measure what you have on that space that is open. I have 3 inches. And then I'm going to measure half of 3 inches. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So I'm going to take 1.5 inch from this point and mark, and from the outer point and mark. So you can see how I shared that at that space. So you just go ahead and connect to the bust point. So here I'm going to take the measurement of what I have at my overbust. So I have 0.75. So with this pattern, you'll be able to know your exact overbust measurement. So I have extended my line out of the shoulder because I want to replace that 1.5 inch of my dart. So you can see how I'm placing my pattern ruler. I place it in a way that the 1.5 touches the chest line and touches the arm side line. So the next thing we want to do now is to draw the style line on the neckline. So to do that, I'm going to open up my bust dart at the middle to the bust point. So I'll be able to close up that dart, put it together and draw my style line. So I'm going to measure my neck depth right now. So this neck depth is by choice. From the shoulder, I'm going to take 8.5 inches. So you can make yours deeper at 9. You can make it upper than 9 inches. So I'm using 8.5 inches for mine. So I marked 8.5 inches. So I'll grab my pattern ruler right now. So I'll be able to connect that line. So you can see how I'm placing from that 8.5 inches. You can actually sit up your ruler up if you really want it to have a deep curve. From the 8.5, I connected to the overbust line, and then wherever it passes the armhole line, I stopped at that point. So just mark it, make sure it passes the overbust, and wherever it stops at the armhole line, that is it. So I'm going to close back my bust dart right now because I've really achieved the neckline which I desire. So after closing up that bust dart line, next I'm going to come up from the chest line by 1/2 inch. Remember, in the front piece we came up by 1/2 inch just to curtail the exposure of the armhole part. So I'm going to connect from that 1/2 inch back to the arm side line. So after that, I went back to the waistline and measured 2.5 inches away from the waist dart. That is just the mark you are seeing right there. So I want to create a slanted line of a dart, okay, just a little dart of 0.5 inch in total. So I share this 0.25 on the other side just to snatch my waist a little bit more. So this is optional. You can put the dart or not, okay, just to create more lines for this corset. So after connecting that dart, this is what I got. So I have to label them F1, F2, F3 and make my marks accordingly so that when cutting and stitching, it will be very easy for me to identify. Now, so the next thing is to come up by 1.5 inch to style the down part of it. So if you want to go by this regular style line, fine and good. When cutting your pattern, you can cut through the red line. But for me, I'm not going with any style line for now. I like to finish my corset before I style. Of course, you'll see how I did it in this project. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to replace that dart on the hemline. That was 0.5 inch that I added. I'm going to replace it so the hip line is not shortened. So after that, I'm going to cut out my pattern right away. So I'm going to cut the pattern right now. As you can see me do from the armhole side, I'll follow all the lines accordingly. So I'll quickly cut out the lines. Like I said, I'm not making use of any style line yet. So I'll just cut the pieces accordingly. So after cutting, this is what we have for the front piece. Now we want to go over to the back piece. So here is my pattern for the back piece, and this is my shoulder, chest line, waistline, and the full length line. So from the shoulder, my chest line is 9 inches, my waistline is 15 inches because my bust dart is 2 inches. So I counted 2 inches up. And the hem line is 23 inches right now because of the bust dart. So my shoulder divide by 2. I also repeated the same thing I did for the front. Of course, you know how to go about this, just to create the arm side line. So the midline, I came in by 0.5 inch and connected and measured my bust divide by 4, which is 10 inches. I'll connect. So I've completed my armhole line right now. Next is to come over to the waistline. I'm still going to use this snatched waist, which I took away 4 inches and I had 34 inches. So divide by 4 gave me 8.5 inches. So I'm going to add 1.5 inch of my dart because I'm going to create my dart accordingly. So the hip line 12 inches, I'll also connect. That is hip circumference divided by 4. So now on the waistline, I'm going to divide my waistline into 3. Divide your waistline into 3. So I have to divide what I got there into 3 sections. So I'm going to draw my line across. So for this first line, I came up by 1 inch above the chest line. And for this, I just drew the line right there. So here is 1 inch. So I'll impute 1 inch that is half an inch on the right and half an inch on the left. And for this 0.25, 0.25, that makes it up to the 1.5 inch that I added on the side. So now I'm going to complete my dart line for the back. Of course, the back is not an issue anyway. So after marking this dart, I'll come up by half an inch and come down by 1.5 inch. So I'm going to connect from that half an inch to 1.5 inch. Remember, we came up by half an inch for the front piece when we recreated the armhole line. So now I'm going to come in by 1.5 inch. That is how open I want my corset back to be. So I'll just connect the 1.5 inch, and these are my loop lines. So now I'll come over to the side. That is, if you want to use the regular style line, you come to the side and measure 1.5 inch. So if you measure 1.5 inch on the side, just go ahead and connect the regular corset style line. But I'm not going to do this. I'm cutting my pattern. I'll do that once I'm done sewing. So this is B1, B2, B3, and I have to also make my marks accordingly. So we have gradually come to the end of the drafting tutorial. So the next is to cut out what we have accordingly. So the sewing part will be coming up in the next tutorial. So I'll be dropping the link on the description box below on how to make this beautiful corset.